Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Spark of War Book 3, a LitRPG progression fantasy series, by Carter J. Thompson, narrated by Raquel Beattie. Chapter 1. Elle saluted the generals in the room, spun on her heel, then strode out the open door. Behind her, a guard standing outside closed the door, and she gave the young man, a cadet, a quick nod of thanks before continuing down the hall. Taking the first turn she found to get out of sight, she leaned heavily against the wall. 2 days since she'd gotten back from the Isles of Pilly, and this was the first moment she'd had to herself. After the infirmary, her eyes went down to her bandaged left arm, blue runes glowing, stitched in the fabric. She'd been summoned straight to the generals. Sure, Nexon and Lays had already filled them in on what had happened, but they'd still wanted to hear it all again. She'd tried to give them the short version, but they weren't having it. So she'd given them the story. All of it. "They finally let you out, huh?" Nadina asked, as she came around the same corner Elle just had. "I was waiting for you the other way. Want to tell me about it?" Elle looked at her wingmate, one of the 3 who'd come with her on their trip to the Isles of Pilly to return the ember. Then shook her head. "Food first. I'm starving." "Mess hall?" "They have pork bombs," Elle said, like that answered everything. And well, it did. "Let's go then. I've got a couple updates for you as well, and Phelps is looking for you too. After you've got some food in you. I know you won't hear a thing I say until you've eaten." With another nod, Elle pushed herself off the wall and walked beside the other woman toward the Firestorm mess hall. They didn't talk along the way, Nadina obviously sensing Elle's fatigue, and knowing her one-track mind when it came to food. Especially the fiery pork bomb Mark II. Elle tried to reflexively reach up with her left hand to wipe the back of her mouth in anticipation, but the sharp spike of pain and bound arm turned that into a wince. "You okay?" Nadina snaked her hand under Elle's good arm to catch her as she stumbled. "Yeah, just—" Elle shrugged her left shoulder as much as she could under the tight bindings. "Not used to this." "Does it still hurt? The doctors thought it was pretty bad." "You talked to them?" "Some of the nurses, while I was checking on Dane." "You mean when you were smothering him with a pillow?" "He wouldn't sleep." "Still needs to breathe." "He's fine." Elle raised an eyebrow, and Nadina put on her best innocent face. "Whatever," Elle grumbled, making a mental note to check on the big guy after food. "And yeah, it hurts, but the pain isn't too bad. More, my balance is shot. Never realized how much I use the arm without thinking about it, even when I'm walking." Nadina's face went from innocent to disbelieving pretty quickly. The woman had seen the state of Elle's ruined arm. Charred, flayed, and little more than bone, with the occasional gooey bit in a lot of places. That wasn't even counting the broken hand, shattered fingers, and 5 other fractures the doctors mentioned. "It's fine," Elle quickly said, as Nadina opened her mouth. "I'm fine, really. Just burning hungry. We there yet?" The rhetorical question got answered as they rounded the next corner to step into the noise of the bustling mess hall. The usually bustling mess hall. That was actually so quiet, the squeak of Elle's boots on the floor practically echoed from one end of the perfectly lined-up tables to the other. Elle started, eyes snapping to the food stalls along the side wall. "They closed?" even as she asked, she spotted all the vendors eyeing her like hawks, each sizing her up to guess where she'd go. As soon as they recognized who she was, all but one collectively sighed and went about their business. Only the sandwich artist nodded solemnly in her direction, and she returned the gesture. The man knew his business, and she was there for it. "Deployment started," Nadina said. "One of the things I was going to update you on." Elle grunted in response, then started towards the man making her lunch. I'll get a seat," Nadina said. "Hopefully you don't have any trouble finding me." The woman trailed off, and Elle heard her boots echo with every step as she headed for their usual table. "Corporal," the sandwich artist said as Elle approached. "Sergeant now," Elle said. "That's not important, though. That the Mark II?" "Of course. Usual toppings?" Elle eyed left and right, then leaned in, her voice low. "Double them." "Are you mad?" the man practically bellowed, his voice echoing through the cavernous hall. Vendor heads snapped in his direction at the outburst, and he scowled back before leaning in. Quieter, he asked again, "Are you mad? Double! The last person who had double is still in the infirmary." "I can take it," Elle said. "Besides, I just came from the infirmary." "Then I don't want to send you back." "Just do it. I can handle it." The man started, but cut off as Elle slapped her good hand down on the counter. "Double." "Fine," he answered, throwing up his hands. "I want it on record, I warned you." "Noted." Elle leaned back, though the man across from her looked from her face to her bandaged arm. "You okay?" "Just hungry." He looked again from her face to her arm. "I'll throw in a side of slaw. On the house." "Thanks," Elle said, licking her lips as the sandwich in front of her came together. The masterpiece in front of her. Why hadn't she ever asked for double toppings before? As the man put the final piece in place and lifted the knife, however, she held up her hand, heat rushing up her neck. Sergeant?" the artist asked, knife paused above the middle of the sandwich. The words were stuck in Elle's throat. The shame at what she was about to ask, almost making her swallow them back down. She couldn't, though, especially not with double toppings. She just needed to suck it up and ask, no matter how embarrassing it was. Can you... She stopped and started. "Can you cut it into quarters?" she finished, barely above a whisper. Knife still frozen in the air, the sandwich artist glanced one more time to Elle's bandaged arm. Then, with 3 quick cuts, separated the meal into 4 equal parts. "For you, of course." "Thanks," Elle said, though she couldn't look the man in the eye until the sandwich was tightly wrapped in wax paper and placed on a tray. "Here's the slaw." The man held up a small bowl, "as well as extra napkins and the biggest glass of water I could find. Don't die." "Huh, you're not the first person to give me that advice in the last few days," Elle said, thinking back to the pillish gunslinger, Tass. "It's good advice." "It is. Thanks. I may be back for seconds later." "I'll be here." Elle picked up the tray with one hand, taking a second to get the balance right, then headed over to join Nadina at their usual table. Other than the 2 of them, there were only 4 other Firestorm in the entire hall, and from the looks of them, They'd also just gotten out of the infirmary. "Did I hear him say double toppings?" Nadina asked as Elle sat down. "I am not carrying you to the doctors again." "Everybody worries too much," Elle said, carefully unwrapping the glorious, bulging, fiery pork bomb Mark II. Then, without another word, she scooped up one of the quarters in her good hand and went to work. So burning good. The spice of double ingredients really was at a whole other level, the heat reminding her of the exploding ember back in Wee Rock. Except it was all in her mouth, and it was delicious. Elle practically purred as she ate it, and Nadina couldn't do anything but shake her head. "Only you," Nadina chuckled with a shake of her head. That was the last thing the other woman said, until Elle stuffed the last corner of sauce-soaked bread into her mouth a few minutes later. "I can't believe I never got double before. That was the best thing ever. I need another one," Elle said, starting to stand, until a hand dropped onto her shoulder and pushed her back down into her seat. "Got you covered," Lays said, dropping another wax-wrapped package in front of Elle. "Sandwich guy said something about you not spontaneously combusting, so he put double toppings on this. I tried to stop him, but he insisted. Should I—" Lays trailed off as Elle ripped open the wrapping and tore into the second sandwich. "Well, might as well get comfy," Nadina said to Lays. "She'll be a few minutes." When Elle finally pushed the final bite into her mouth, she leaned back on the mess hall bench, looked to the ceiling, and let out a contented sigh. "I finally feel alive again." A flare of power at her fingertips ignited a blue flame to consume the last of the sticky sauce there. Getting that on her uniform just wasn't acceptable, and she stared at the blue fire. Was it just her imagination, or was it brighter? "Elle," Lays said, her voice dropping in that dangerous way it did when a lecture was coming. "Pretty sure the doctors would be having a fit seeing you use your spark when it's supposed to be focused on healing you." "Ah." Elle snapped her hand shut, the flames vanishing into her fist like they'd never been there. "Sorry. Post-pork bomb euphoria." "I'm seriously not sure why you're not lit up like the pyre right now," Nadina said. "I'm sweating just from being across the table from that much spice." "You should give it a try," Elle responded. "You even get extra slaw." "That was extra? You inhaled it in one go." "Balances the heat out with a hit of tang," Elle explained. "Lays, thanks for the second one. Hit the spot." "No problem," Lays said. "Thought you might need it after the all-nighter with the generals." "Ugh." "You want to tell us about it?" Come on," Nadina said. "You'll feel better." Elle leaned forward to put her good elbow on the table. "Pretty much what you'd expect. I started with how our small wing of 4 Firestorm arrived in Pilly from the short trip through the in-between. That far into the story, and Canon already had questions. After that, it was how we'd found the group of ragged civvies running for their lives from the pack of scaled bears." Nadina and Lays both nodded, having been there. "Those burning bears live up to their names," Nadina said. "Did you explain how they were practically walking tanks?" "Except when you shoot them in the eye," Lays chuckled, referring to when Tass had done just that. "Yeah, then they become pissed off walking tanks." "I gave them all the details," Elle said, "including how one of the bears punched through my frost armor." And the real reason the people were running? Lays asked. The bears were a good reason to run, but the bigger picture reason. Yeah, we got into the Pillish conscription, and how they were hooking soldiers and civvies alike up to their weapons of war. Lot of questions about that, too. Spent a good hour talking about what I knew of the Pillish weapons. I think they were annoyed I didn't bring one back for them to see. Not as annoyed as Phelps will be, Nadina said. Elle groaned and shook her head. Didn't you say he wanted to talk to me, too? Yeah. We should go see him after we finish here. You know his weapons are going to be needed against the sea worms. What did the generals have to say about the sea worms? Lays asked. Whoa, cutting way ahead in the story there, Elle joked. I still had to talk about the monkeys, the killer vines, the destroyed fort towns, and the hangnails before we even got close to the sea worms. And let me tell you, we spent another hour talking about those clawed freaks. Makes sense. They make up the bulk of the enemy's troops, Nadina said. Elle nodded, remembering her encounters against the child-sized monsters with the 3 sword-like claws on each hand. After extensive discussion on how best to fight them, Elle continued. They finally let me move on to the trip on the Bucking Bride, Captain Bitz's ship, and the journey to Wee Rock. Of course, we had to pause again for more information on both the Pillish warship and the sea worm we encountered on the way. To say the generals are nervous about sending groundies on ships is a vast understatement, and very understandable. Every body of water is suddenly threatening, Nadina said. Sure, Ballison is in the middle of the continent, but there are rivers and lakes all over the place. One even running right through the city. We could have a sea worm popping up in our own backyard. Wee Rock is not close, Lays said. Oh, don't get me wrong, I don't think we're safe here, but it'll take them weeks to get here. Assuming they didn't already start coming months ago, Elle said. You heard what Sol said. They already emptied that city on the coast of Vestis. They aren't just mindless monsters. You saw those blue people on Wee Rock, and the whole ring system that sucked sparks in to open the gate to wherever. And that avatar, Nadina chimed in. The one Bitz called the depths. There's planning there. We can't take anything for granted. We're going to have to watch the coasts and the rivers leading towards the city. But how else are we going to get troops to Pilly? Lays asked. Even if we send every firestorm we have, I don't think it'll be enough. We lost too many in the war against Gould, then more in the final battle with the golem. Maybe if it was just hangnails, but the sea worms, blue guys, we need a name for them, and the depths? We need the groundies and their numbers if we want to have a chance. Do the generals have a plan? Elle sighed. They do. Me. Chapter 2. Pardon? Lays asked. Wait, they want you to move the groundies and their artillery through the in-between, don't they? Elle nodded. Didn't we just go through all this a week ago? You can't move that many people. What did Sol say? You need a connection with them. And General Cannon saw how hard it was for you to open the doorway. Well, Elle started. But it wasn't hard, Nadina interrupted. Not the second one, at least, when we were coming back. Even half dead, no offense, and with only one arm, Elle practically snapped her fingers and the portal opened. And maybe it was the adrenaline, or the shock from the battle, but I feel like we got back in less than half the time. Elle pointed at the other woman across the table. That's the same thing the generals latched onto. They're going to work to mobilize the troops as best they can, I guess, but they're also expecting me to figure out a way to move more people through the in-between. It could shave weeks off of travel time, Nadina said. More for the groundies. It'd give us a chance. All great, in theory, Lays said. But how are you going to do it? No idea, Elle admitted. Nadina is right, though. That doorway to come back was easy. I barely had to think about it, and there it was. Burn it if I wanted to. I feel like I could open one right here, practically directly back to Bits's ship. Please don't, Lays said. I doubt the ship is still there, and I don't feel like a cold dunk in the same water as those sea worms. Fair, Elle agreed. Nadina leaned in close and spoke low enough only the two women at the table could hear her. An after effect of the ember stabbing you in the chest? Not exactly stabbing, Elle said. Looked pretty stabby to us, Lays agreed. Whatever, Elle grumbled, though really they weren't wrong. Her voice stayed low as she continued. And maybe? I definitely still feel an energy running through me. Like I was saying to Nadina before, I think it might be why I'm not curled up in the fetal position somewhere from how much my arm hurts. Did you tell them, the generals, about what happened with the ember? Lays asked, a clear look of worry on her face. Not about the ring, but with the stabbing you part? Elle shook her head. I may have omitted that part. Did either of you? Nadina and Lays both shook their heads as well. Didn't seem right for us to talk about it, Lays said. Something about it feels like a secret, Nadina admitted. Why just you? We were right up there beside you. Elle tapped the center of her chest with her good hand. Something to do with my different spark? Best I can figure out. Do you think you can do it? Lays asked. Bring that many groundies through the in-between with you, I mean. I don't know, Elle said. There's a big difference between taking you guys through with me and a bunch of people I have no connection with. But I definitely feel closer to it than I did before we left. Maybe that ember did something. Does Nexon know about it? Lays asked. Do I know about what? Nexon asked, from suddenly right burning beside Elle. Elle nearly jumped out of her skin at her brother appearing like magic on the bench beside her, then winced as the sudden motion pulled on her bound arm. Sorry, Nexon said, as Elle pushed the pain back down. I didn't mean to startle you like that. How is it? It's fine, Elle said, blowing air out between her teeth. Really? Well, no, it's not actually fine. My arm looks like one of those anatomy dummies back from training under all this. But it'll heal. How the blaze did you get here without anybody noticing? She finished with a punch to her brother's shoulder, though the look on his face said making her jump, and the pain it caused, hurt him far more. I was practicing, Nexon said, then held up a hand before anybody could ask another question. Whether it was because he was a higher rank, Elle's older brother, or just because he was Nexon, all three of the younger Firestorm snapped their mouths shut. First, what do I maybe know? Elle gave a quick look around the group, but nobody besides her friends was anywhere near enough to overhear. When the ember exploded back in Wee Rock, part of it, like a ribbon of fire, hit me in the chest, went straight into my spark, I think. What? Nexon said, shifting on the bench to get a better look at her, his eyes searching her face. Are you okay? Any side effects? Arm aside, and the overall beating I took at the hands of that avatar, I feel better than ever, Elle said, which is the only real side effect I've noticed so far. We're also thinking it helped her open that door to the in-between to get us back more easily, Lays added. I was wondering why that one was so quick, Nexon said, nodding slightly. You sure that's it, though? Nothing else? No urges to burn the world or wrap yourself up in double-forged electrum? Elle gave her brother her best glare, but Nexon was long since immune to it. Nothing like that. No ember influence at all. It was well and good asleep before it blew up. It did kind of seem like it noticed you up there, Nadina said, her eyes looking up at the ceiling like she was remembering what had happened. Well, I do have a history with embers, Elle said. Since I brought that one back from Gould and it tried to take over my spark. As soon as she said that, the room around her vanished in the haze of memory. Gone were her friends and the tables of the mess hall, replaced instead by the dark stone walls of a small room. Script glowing like the sunrise lay etched in the walls, floor, and ceiling all around her, while in each corner a small brazier sat burning. The script seemed to be tightest around the torches, like they were somehow the source. But Elle's eyes traced the writing along the floor to wrap around her in a circle where she sat. Directly above her on the ceiling, the pattern repeated itself, leaving a blank spot directly above her. Fascinating and terrifying as that all was, it was the 4 torches that kept drawing her eyes. Whispers seemed to flow from them, twisting in the air just below what she could actually hear, but loud enough they couldn't be her imagination. And now that she looked at them, each of the 4 torches was a little bit different. The dancing flames of one torch seemed to hold another place inside of it, like looking through the window of a burning building. Tall trees and a sense of a vast space filled Elle's mind before her head turned to the next torch. For this one, thin tendrils, like stretching claws, reached for the other 3 torches. The small hands seemed to pick hints of the others out of the air before pulling them back to itself, pulsing with each small meal. A hint of growing strength bled from this torch, but it paled compared to a pulse of power from the next torch Elle looked at. This torch flared brighter and brighter, to the point its light filled the room, and then just as quickly its light vanished. Little more than a smolder remained on the wooden torch, but even as Elle watched, the flame grew brighter again, stronger, like almost being snuffed out had increased its determination to survive, to become more powerful. Again, the torch's flames bloomed in intensity until they once again filled the room with their light, only to vanish once more. Except the process continued to repeat, and even though Elle only let her eyes linger a moment, she could sense the eternal struggle to increase its power, like learning from mistakes or defeat. While her mind pondered the meaning of it, the 4th and final torch in the room caught her attention. This torch gave off a much subtler impression than the others, almost like it was dormant. No, that wasn't right. It didn't sleep. It shifted. The form of the flames, the shape and texture of them, constantly changed. First a flame connecting to somewhere else, then a fire with barely visible arms reaching out, to a cinder growing in strength from nothing, over and over.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?